Hello, Coach Fus here. Welcome. We are discussing Eco 10B and we are focusing our topic on study unit 7. I'm fixing my camera here. We are dealing with aggregate demand and aggregate supply in the economy. Maybe just quickly, what is aggregate demand? What is aggregate supply? Basically, this is demand and supply. But the word aggregate, let me try and see how yes, sorry. Okay, the word aggregate means total demand in the economy, total demand for goods and services in the economy, and total supply for goods and services in the economy. Unlike the normal demand and supply of microeconomics, where we are talking about demand and supply of a particular product, demand and supply for bread, demand and supply for milk. In this case, we are talking about the aggregates, the totals of all goods and services in the economy. Okay, so we are dealing with the ADAS model. You will always find this in the assignments. You will always find this in the exam. So pay very close attention. Look, we are following our notes. Most of the things you will need to read for yourself. I'm more interested in demonstrations, practical parts. The theory, please read for yourself. Where you don't understand, come back to me. I will clarify. Okay, now let's start with the aggregate demand. Like the usual demand curve, your aggregate demand curve is downward sloping. Okay? And then like the usual supply curve, your aggregate supply curve is upward sloping. And then this is the whole economy. This is the equilibrium in the economy. This is total goods demanded and supplied in the economy. I'm just going to say Q0. And then these are the price levels or inflation levels in the economy. I'm going to say P0. Okay, so this is our economy in terms of the ADAS model. The AD curve has a downward slope, sloping downwards, and the AS curve is sloping upwards. Okay. Now you need to know the reasons why the AD curve is sloping downwards. They like asking this question as well. There is the wealth effect. It's 3 of them. You need to know them, especially listing them. I've never seen where they say explain them, but obviously you need to understand them. Number 1, the wealth effect. Number 2, the interest rate effect. Number 4, the international trade effect. Okay? All 3 of them are related to price levels. These are the reasons why the AD curve is sloping downwards. Let's start with the wealth effect. When prices, for example, increase, you are having 50 rand in your pocket, prices increase in the economy or the inflation increases. That 50 rand is no longer worth the same value as before increase in prices and after increase in prices. It used to buy 5 breads, and then the general prices increased. Now it can only buy 4 loaves of breads, not 5 breads, 5 loaves of bread, by the way. So can you see the wealth effect? When prices increase, our wealth levels decrease. When prices fall, our wealth levels increase. Why? The purchasing power of money either goes up or go down. I've just explained that one. So it's related to the price levels. So the wealth effect, when prices, for example, drop to P1, for now ignore the aggregate supply curve, okay? Actually, let me not do it here. Let me do the aggregate demand curve separately just to explain this part. Prices were here at Q0, at P0, and quantities demanded were here at Q0. Okay? Now prices drop. As prices drop to P1, we feel more wealthy. We increase our quantities demanded for goods and services. Because prices have dropped, our money has more purchasing power. So can you see? Let's say A, let's say B here. Can you see this is one of the reasons why the demand curve or the aggregate demand curve is sloping downwards. Now let's talk the interest rates effect. This one is also related to price levels, okay? When interest rates, let me just read it quickly. When the price levels fall, this may lead to a decline in interest rates. So they go in the same direction. Price levels fall. Since price levels has fallen, this automatically may lead to decline in interest rates. I'm trying to think how. Anyway, when price levels fall, this leads to decline in interest rates, which stimulates investment spending. So the falling of prices causes decline in interest rates. The decline in interest rates causes credit to be cheap. So investors are able to borrow more and invest more. This leads to increase in investment spending. The result is an increase in the quantity of goods and services demanded in the economy. Remember, when investment spending in the economy increases, it means more projects are being opened, more people are being employed, more people are having more money in their hands, and there's more people are having more money in their hands, the demand for goods and services in the economy increase from Q0 to Q1. Prices fell because of interest rates falling, leading to higher investment levels, more people employed, more income in their hands, more demand for goods and services in the economy. So the wealth effect, now we just discussed the interest rate effect, which are all related to price levels. And then the international trade effect is the third one. Usually you need to know how to list them. Don't stress too much about knowing deep how to explain them, but it's good to have a clear picture. The international trade effect, let's read. If a fall in the price levels results in decline in interest rates, similar to the previous one. What is another effect? When interest rates decline, this will cause foreign investors to start taking their funds out of our country because they invested hoping to earn higher interests. But now price levels fell, causing interest rates to fall. Now because they are not going to profit much because interest rates have fallen, so they take their money out of our country. We call it outflow of capital. As they are taking more of their money out of our economy, let's say their money is $1. Now the dollar becomes scarce in our economy and we start demanding more dollar. As we are demanding more dollar, it's a chain reaction, follow me. As we are demanding more dollar, anything that is in high demand increases in price. The value of the dollar increases. As the value of the dollar increases, automatically it means the value of the rand has decreased or depreciated. The dollar appreciated, the rand depreciated. Now the depreciated rand makes it cheaper for foreigners to come and buy our goods. As these foreigners are coming to buy our goods and services, it means there is more demand for our goods and services locally. Can you see? The whole thing started with, we call this the international trade effect. The whole thing started with prices falling, causing interest rates to fall, causing outflow of foreign capital, causing appreciation of the dollar, depreciation of the rand. The cheaper rand makes people to be more interested in our goods because it's cheaper to buy from us. So they start buying more of our goods locally. So our goods and services, the demand for them increases. Can you see? Same effect. Okay, cool. So you need to know the causes of the downward sloping of the demand curve. Now, there are other things that affect the demand curve or the aggregate demand curve. We are back here. Those other things are these ones: aggregate expenditure items, consumption expenditure, investment expenditure, as we discussed them in the previous lesson, government expenditure, X minus Z, which is net exports. If anything changes in one of these, maybe let's say in this one, actually I'm more interested in this one, but in any of these, if anything changes in those ones, let's say the government expenditure increases, this will push the AD curve to the right, to AD1. Usually, how does the government expenditure increase? Usually the government expenditure increases when the government wants to stimulate the economy. They apply what is called expansionary fiscal policy. Increase in government expenditure, causing the AD curve to shift to the right. By the way, the government can also apply a contractionary fiscal policy. For example, increasing taxes. Remember, when they increase taxes, they are taking money from our pockets. As they take money from our pockets, we are left with less money. So the demand for goods and services in that case will fall. The AD curve will go leftwards. Can you see? Now, same thing can also be done by the monetary authorities. Sorry, by the way, when this shifts here, you have a new equilibrium, causing higher prices as well. And then if it happens that it drops this side, you have a new equilibrium, causing quantities demanded to fall and prices to fall. Any of these two situations can happen. Okay? Some people start getting confused when there's too many curves like this. So let me not prolong your confusion. Okay? Okay, this is the original situation in the economy. Also, I was speaking about either contractionary fiscal policy or expansionary fiscal policy. Even the monetary policy can also be done. Remember, the fiscal policy is controlled by the treasurer, the government itself. But the monetary policy is controlled by the Reserve Bank, which is a bit independent from the government. The monetary policy, for example, is mostly the main instrument of the monetary policy is the interest rates. If the Reserve Bank wants to stimulate the economy, they can drop interest rates. Remember, as they drop interest rates, they make it cheaper for people to go and borrow money from the banks. So investors will be able to borrow more money from the banks and invest. As they invest, they employ more people. As they employ more people, people have more income in their hands. As people have more income in their hands, the demand for goods and services increases to AD1, causing prices to go up to P1, causing quantities demanded in the economy and supplied to go up to Q1 with a new equilibrium, E1. This is an expansionary monetary policy. Okay, there can also be a contractionary monetary policy, causing the AD curve to move in that direction. Like which one? Like an increase in interest rates, making it expensive to go and borrow from the banks. And as it's expensive to borrow from the banks, investment levels will fall. As investment levels fall, more people will be retrenched. As more people will be retrenched, people will have less money in their hands. As people have less money in their hands, the demand for goods and services fall. Contractionary. So these policies can either be done through the fiscal policy by the treasurer or by the Reserve Bank. The Reserve Bank, monetary policy. Fiscal policy, the treasurer or the government, through playing with government expenditure and taxes. Okay, now can you see that these two policies that I'm talking about, the fiscal and the monetary, they only shift the aggregate demand curve. Okay, hence they are called demand management policies. They don't touch the aggregate supply curve. They touch the aggregate demand curve. They are called demand management policies. Okay, and then now let's shift our focus to be more on aggregate supply. Sorry, even here you can say 0. Now, this is the situation in the economy. Let's talk the aggregate supply and let's try and explain it separately, even itself here, the AS. What causes the aggregate supply to have an upward sloping curve? The main thing is the prices of factors of production, or the costs of factors of production. What are factors of production? We know them. It's land, it's capital, it's even wages or human resources, all those things. Whatever are inputs in the production process, they are factors of production. For example, when wages increase, what happens? Let's say prices were here. When wages increase, suppliers will not be able to supply more goods and services, so this will drop. You will have a new equilibrium, not really equilibrium. The quantities supplied will drop, the prices of goods and services will also drop. Why? It becomes expensive to produce, so it will be expensive to supply. So any factor of production, for example, oil prices. When oil prices increase, you will experience the same thing. So this deals with the movement along the aggregate supply curve. And then the opposite direction can also happen. Okay? Now, any other factor that affects supply, actually the same inputs in the production process, your raw materials, whatever, the same inputs in the production process, their availability and their productivity, how productive they are, two things, has an effect on the aggregate supply. But the effect of the availability, not their prices or their costs, but their availability and their productivity, their effect on the aggregate supply is a shifting of the aggregate supply curve. So they affect the position of the aggregate supply curve. Okay, let's say all of a sudden people are encouraged. I don't know how I can explain it. Maybe a new president made a beautiful speech, encouraged people to be more serious at their work, to take their work serious, to love their country, to be patriotic and stuff. So the production levels in the economy increase. as production levels in the economy, can you see now I'm talking their productivity, their availability and their productivity. As production levels increase in the economy, aggregate supply will shift to the right. Causing prices to fall, causing quantity demanded and supplied to increase. Your new equilibrium is here. Can you see? So same thing. Here we are talking prices of inputs or costs of inputs. Here we are talking their availability and their productivity. If for some reasons people feel like, no man, it's the same, this country is too corrupt, even when they go to work they're not motivated, the productivity of factors of production, especially labor, will drop, causing the aggregate supply curve to move to the left. Quantities that are being supplied or produced drop to Q2. This now causes prices to increase. This first caused prices to drop. Can you see? So these ones affect the position of the aggregate demand curve. Any change in these ones. And then any change in the availability and productivity of factors of production affects the position of the aggregate supply curve. Okay? So can you see? The aggregate supply curve is not affected by any monetary policy or fiscal policy. Those two policies are demand management policies. This one has got its own factors that affect it, which I just explained. Now let's move forward and see what else I need to touch. Let me just touch something. If the Reserve Bank and the National Treasury are more worried about unemployment than about inflation, remember there is what we call trade-off between unemployment and inflation. We have explained it in the previous lessons. In the economy, when you want to decrease the levels of unemployment, which also means increasing the levels of employment. If you want to decrease the levels of unemployment, you must know that whatever policy you are going to take to decrease the levels of unemployment will cause inflation to go up. Whatever measure you're going to take to bring inflation down, remember inflation is general price levels in the economy. If whatever measure you take to bring inflation down, you must know it will cause more unemployment. So there's a conflict between those two. So they say if the Reserve and the National Treasury are more worried about unemployment than about inflation, they will apply expansionary policies. If they are more worried about inflation, they will apply contractionary policies. Catch that one. Okay. An increase in the cost of producing the total product results in higher prices. For example, increase in wages will result in those products that are being supplied being more expensive as well. While at the same time it causes lower production levels, income and employment, and higher unemployment. What we have here is a situation called stagflation. We are not touching this one for the first time. Stagflation is a situation where price levels go up, unemployment levels go up at the same time. It's called stagflation. It's a combination of two words. It means stagnation of the economy going together with inflation. It's called stagflation. You have economy like Zimbabwe, where you have high levels of unemployment at the same time with high price levels. That's a stagflation. Okay. Now, I want to touch the supply shocks. Don't be surprised by the word supply shocks. Don't be surprised. It's something which is the same as what we were explaining. remember this represents this whole line, this Q, and this P tells us that this line deals with quantities, this line deals with price levels, and this one is just saying at quantity 0. Doesn't mean that there's no quantities, it's just a marking. We can start by saying quantity 1 and price 1, and then this is our equilibrium level in the economy. Now, when there is an adverse supply shock, for example, when there's a drought, it will affect the whole farming industry. And when the whole farming industry is affected, prices of food will be affected. And when prices of food are affected, it affects the whole price levels in the economy. So that is an adverse supply shock. Aggregate supply will drop to AS1, causing prices to go up, quantities to go down. P1, Q1, and E1. If this is an adverse supply shock, it's a shock. A positive supply shock can also happen, pushing the aggregate supply curve to the right. For example, if a war in Ukraine and Russia can end today, the availability and production of oil will increase almost immediately, causing almost everything in the economies to come back or to improve. Because remember, oil prices are affecting a lot in the economy. The transportation of goods and services, the production of petrol, production of, all those things. That would be a positive supply shock. It will cause supply or production of goods and services in the economy to increase. So a positive supply shock will move the AS curve to the right, causing general price levels to fall, causing quantity levels to increase. Can you see? Or 2 here. If you use 2 here, use 2 here, use 2 here. If you use 1 here, use 1 here, use 1 here. Okay? So, I just explained the supply shocks. And then the term, you also need to know this term, the monetary transmission mechanism. Monetary transmission mechanism. This term simply means, remember there are 2 sectors in the economy, in the domestic economy. We have the monetary sector and we have the real sector. The monetary sector is a sector that deals with transactions of monetary nature or financial nature. The banking system or the banking industry, the selling of shares, the buying and selling of currencies, the changing of interest rates, all those things are in the monetary sector. Okay? And then the real sector of the economy is the sector where goods and services are exchanged or sold. Sector where you're buying agricultural products, where you're buying bread and whatever goods and services, clothing, you're buying the doctor's services, the lawyer's services. That's the real sector. So, monetary transmission mechanisms means what starts in the monetary sector, how does it end up affecting the real sector? You can read here. It says, the way in which changes in the monetary sector are transmitted to the rest of the economy is called the monetary transmission mechanism. Let me make a good example. If the Reserve Bank decides to drop interest rates, actually the repo rate, which is actually an interest rate. Remember, what is the repo rate? It's a rate at which the Reserve Bank borrows money to other banks. And then the banks then adjust their interest rates to the public. So the repo rate is still an interest rate. So let's say the Reserve Bank drops interest rate. Now, what is happening there is happening in the monetary sector. Remember the investment function that we did in the previous lesson. The Reserve Bank decides to drop interest rates to R1. What happens? Investment levels increase because credit has become cheaper. Can you see? What started in the monetary sector is now affecting the real sector, where investment levels are happening. As investment levels are increasing, remember, It means more factories being opened, more goods and more people employed, more goods and services being produced, more money in the hands of people, more demand for goods and services. Can you see? Everything else that I just explained after the changing of interest rates is how everything has been penetrating the real sector from the monetary sector. It keeps penetrating by increasing investment levels, increasing employment levels, increasing production levels, increasing income levels, increasing aggregate expenditure. So this is monetary transmission mechanism. Okay, you need to know that one as well. The monetary and fiscal policy in the ADAS framework. This one you need to read. What I'm going to just try and touch a little bit is the policy legs. It's one of the dilemmas that policies face, both the monetary policy and the fiscal policy in the economy. And these ones are called policy legs. A leg means not the leg of your foot, or a leg means in terms of lagging behind, right? So there are 4 legs. Number 1, the recognition leg. It may take time to recognize that there is a problem in the economy that needs intervention. That one is called the recognition leg. Number 2, the decision leg. It may take time. The authorities may lag behind in making the right decision to intervene. Maybe to intervene to correct unemployment, to intervene to correct inflation levels, and so forth and so forth. And then the implementation leg. Now, we have recognized that yes, we are having a challenge. Now we have made the decision to attack the challenge. Now, the ones who are implementing the decision may also lag behind in implementing what has been decided upon. And now the impact leg. Now we have implemented whatever we are implementing, but the impact of what we are implementing may lag way too behind. For example, the impact leg, which is not really, it's just a good example. The impact leg of the coronavirus is happening right now. Most people are experiencing a huge pinch of what was caused by the coronavirus. So the effects are lagging behind. Something like that. But here we're talking about the policy dilemmas, where policies can go wrong. So timing is very important in implementing these policies, because if timing is not correct, correct decisions may be made, correct policies implemented, but the effect might be negative because we have lagged too much behind. Okay. And then another main policy dilemma is the trade-off between inflation and unemployment. Authorities, sometimes they're in a dilemma. Price levels, they want to keep price levels down. At the same time, they want to keep unemployment levels down. But that's impossible. Yes, it's somewhat possible, but it's impossible when you're applying policies. A policy that you apply to decrease unemployment will push price levels up. That's a policy dilemma. A policy that you apply to bring prices down will cause unemployment to go up. So you need to catch that one as well. And then the other approaches to microeconomics, please read for yourself. It's just simple theory. What the main ones that I like to touch on is the difference between the Keynes, remember we are more the Keynes law versus the Say's law. Say's law says supply creates its own demand. Say, one of the economists, believed that when goods and services are being supplied in the economy, it means more people are employed. And since more people are employed, they have more income. Therefore, there's an automatic demand for goods and services. That's his theory. Says law. Supply creates its own demand. And then Keynes came and said, no, it can't work like that. It works actually opposite. Demand creates supply. People produce goods, more goods and services when there is a demand for them. When there is no demand for them, there is no need. Actually, they are not motivated to produce more goods and services. Can you see? They go in opposite directions. So catch that one. And also, the classical economists and monetarists, they are more siding with Say's law a little bit. Let's read. Classical economists and monetarists generally believe that free market economies are intrinsically stable. Okay, let me explain this. They believe that government should stay away from the economy. They are saying market economy, like economies as we know them, the buying and selling of goods and services, whatever is happening in the economy, they are saying they are more stable. They are able to correct themselves. So government's role in the economy should be very minimal. That's what they believe. While Keynes believes no ways. Markets are unstable, are unequally distributing income and whatever. So government intervention is very important in the economy. So you need to catch those two differences. For example, the distribution of income. Markets will distribute income to those that are working. But what about the elderly? They're not able to work. What about the disabled? Really disabled to such an extent that they can't work. What about the children? Who's distributing income to them? Can you see that markets cannot correct that? Government intervention corrects that. And then they provide grants and stuff. This is Keynes' version of which is true. Yes, other than that, any question, I'm here. Mostly catch the aggregate demand and aggregate supply, the causes of shiftings and stuff, the application of either expansionary policies or contractionary policies, and also understanding that both monetary policy and fiscal policies are demand management policies. They don't affect this aggregate supply curve. And then what else? Yeah, I think that's it. Now listen, the next lesson will be based on study unit 8, 9, 10. I think we're going to group them in one tutorial. Why? Because it's a repetition of macroeconomic objectives that we have dealt with. We've went too deep into macroeconomic objectives. We're just going to try and look out for things that we might have missed and try and emphasize on them. So we're going to group that lesson in one more tutorial. Thank you so much. Any question? I'm here. See you in the next lesson.